Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum wa ala a'dahum ajma'in. Respected brothers and sisters, salam alaikum to you all. This year, we've been speaking about the things that cause anxiety and depression, and for people to not be happy in their lives. One of the things that causes this is when the roles and responsibilities that we're naturally designed to do are switched or changed around. Yesterday, Sayyid Mahdi explained how males and females have major biological differences. He also touched on some of the latest research published this year, which proves that even the brain and psychology of males and females are very different. So, not only is our hardware different, but our software is different too. And he concluded logically and scientifically that males and females have been created differently as they have different roles and responsibilities to perform. So then, is it reasonable to expect a lady to do a man's job by going out and working to earn money? And is it reasonable for each of our families to effectively have two fathers? Of course not. And it leads to many issues. For example, the house will not be clean and tidy. The family will not eat the foods that they're supposed to at the times that they're supposed to. The lady will have not seen to herself, and her husband will not be satisfied. The lady will have used up all of her energy outside the home, and she will be seeing to her family with tiredness. The children will not get the attention and love that they need, and many more issues that I will not list right now. Now, I'm pretty sure that many of us are sitting here thinking things like, ladies don't stay home these days. That was 100 years ago. Things don't work like that anymore. Or, but it's a waste of my talent. Or, what will people think of me? Or, I'm not a slave. Or, it's not affordable, and so on. I spent several months researching families within various non-Muslim communities where the lady either never worked or she left her job working outside the home. I looked at the internal struggles that these ladies faced, the financial challenges that these families went through, and even the effects on both their married life and their family life. I found families of all backgrounds, including Christians, Jews, and even atheists, who made this decision. And now I'm going to share with you some of what I found. One of the biggest sources of resistance that ladies face when making the decision to stay at home is actually from themselves. Let me explain some of these thoughts. When people ask me what I do, what will I say? They will think I'm lazy or worthless. But Sarah is a doctor and Zahra is a lawyer. I can't be nothing. My mum and dad encouraged me my whole life to be successful. How will I face them? Respected mothers and sisters, you're not living with Sarah or Zahra. You're living with your husband and your family. Sarah and Zahra, or your mum and dad, are not responsible for your actions or your duties. You are responsible. It doesn't matter whether people in a Majles or a stranger in Asda think of you a certain way. It doesn't matter what they think. You are living your own life with your own husband and your own family. You will be the one to suffer and the one answerable when your marriage goes cold or breaks down, or your children don't turn out the way they're supposed to. And when that happens, none of these people that you worried about will be able to help you. I saw an example of a lady who was a Mexican immigrant to the USA. She came from a slum, one of the poorest communities in Mexico. She worked so hard in the USA and had one of the best medical careers. And she always thought her mum was so proud of her because of this achievement. One day she developed a health condition that meant she could not work anymore. Physically, she couldn't. And she was forced to leave her job. She was forced to stay at home and look after her family. She was so worried about what her mum would think of her losing her job and everything that she had worked so hard for. One day, she video called her mum and showed her that she'd learned how to make traditional Mexican food. And she was very surprised by her mum's reaction. She said she had never seen her mum so proud of her in her life. Another thought we often have is that there are more important things in life than staying at home to look after my family and my home. One successful lady that I came across had an incredibly important job in an organization defending the rights of children. But she left her job because Christian beliefs state that the biblical role of a lady is to look after the family and the home. This lady went on to support other ladies in their decision to stay at home, and millions of people follow her for her advice. Her exact words are, if you have even one thought that it's a waste of your talent or your time to be at home looking after your home or your family, then get that thought out of your head. Marwan was one of the most tyrannical rulers of the Bani Umayyad. He burnt down the house of Imam Sajjad. One day, Marwan was kicked out of the city and fled to the city that Imam Sajjad had moved to. But nobody in that city welcomed Marwan, and so he was forced to go to Imam Sajjad for help. The Imam welcomed him, and he even gave him his house to live in. Marwan was so shocked. He could not believe it. He said, Yabna Rasulallah, I burnt down your house. I simply can't understand. How is it possible for someone to be so kind like you? And Imam Sajjad replied, because our mother is Fatima. Now, he could have replied, my ancestor is the Prophet. My grandfather is Ali. But he didn't. Why do you think this is? All we need to do is ask one of the greatest British authors to have ever lived, C.S. Lewis, who says, the homemaker has the ultimate career. All other careers exist for one purpose only, and that is to support the ultimate career. Now, on a side note, respected mothers and sisters, especially those of us who are blessed to be staying home, let's just take a moment to ask ourselves, are we really doing justice to this ultimate career? And are we looking after our families and our homes in a way that makes us worthy of this highest level of praise? I'll move on to another series of interesting thoughts that ladies often have. I spent so many years in college and university studying to become a doctor or lawyer or whatever. I even did a PhD. If I stay at home, then I'll be throwing all of that hard work away. I spent so much money to study all these years. If I stay at home, then all of that investment will be lost. Or, I've been working so hard in my career all these years. I'm now a manager or a senior. I will lose that position if I stay at home. Respected mothers and sisters, just because we spent so long doing the wrong thing doesn't mean that we're forced to carry on with it. Hor was responsible for the tragedy of Karbala because he was the one that stopped Imam Hussein. But instead of us sending la'na to Hor, the thing that makes us love and respect him is that when he realized he was going down the wrong path, he made the extremely difficult decision of changing his path. This decision was so difficult that his entire body was shaking. But he made this decision and saved himself. Don't we all want to be like Hor? When researching this topic, I saw so many ladies who were incredibly intelligent and successful, like bankers, lawyers, senior managers at companies like Microsoft and Google, high-ranking doctors, and so on. Many of these ladies were earning over £100,000 a year, but all of them left their jobs because they realized that no amount of money or power or online food orders or nannies or daycare was going to replace what their family was losing whilst they were outside earning money. Now, another one of the challenges that ladies face when making or families even face, when making the decision for the lady to stay at home, is that the family believe it's not financially possible. I was going to speak about some of the challenges that families faced and tell you how they changed their lifestyle and cut back on expenses to make it work. And I was also going to tell you what some very famous people and even celebrities have said about this topic of affordability and the encouragement. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. And also the encouragement that these famous people and celebrities have given to people making this decision for the lady to stay at home. But there is so much to cover, and there is not enough time for me to cover these points in the time that I've been given. However, the most important point that I came across during my research is that for families who made a decision for the lady to stay at home, it was always possible. Now, some of you may be thinking, what kind of thing is that to say? Well, of course, if they stayed at home, it was possible. Because if it wasn't possible, then they wouldn't have been able to stay at home. It's like saying, the people who ate dinner last night had food to eat. No, I didn't say for the families where the lady stayed at home, it was always possible. I said for the families who made a decision for the lady to stay at home, it was always possible. What do I mean by this? the only person who can possibly try to use affordability as an excuse for the lady to go out and work is an atheist. Let me explain. Someone who doesn't believe in God and believes that the world is the way it is and nothing's going to change. But the truth is that this worthless world cannot decide whether we should follow God's orders or not. I'll give you an example. One very young Christian couple, where both the husband and wife were only 21 years old, said that they did their calculations, and even if they minimized all their expenses, it still wouldn't be financially possible for the wife to leave her job. But they made a decision that they would do it as soon as it was possible. And they prayed for God to help them achieve that. By the next year, they managed to move to a smaller house, and the wife was then able to stop working. Now, this was several years ago. Now they own a much bigger house, they have 2 children, and they even bought a big piece of land which they turned into a flower garden. And all of this was from the husband's income. When I saw this, I was not surprised one bit. I'd seen countless examples like this in the families that I researched. And I have even seen examples like this in our own community as well. It's really very simple. It's very simple. When you say to yourself, we can't afford it, that was what people did 100 years ago, now we have coronavirus and recession and a useless government, and then you go and do your own thing, then God will say, okay, well, then you obviously don't want my help. You think you know better, so go and do it your way. But when you choose to play by God's rules, then He will make you successful and He will put barakat in what you do. I would like to end with a final point. And the reason I'm ending with this point instead of starting with it is that, frankly speaking, we've all grown up sitting in these majales, listening to Qal al-Sadiq and Qal al-Baqir. I'm sure that many of you have attended these majales way more than I have. But unfortunately, when we look around in our communities, we see that despite being in all these majales, we haven't really acted upon the teachings so much. However, for the sake of completeness of this topic, our Holy Prophet has said, "O Ali, you are responsible for what is outside the house, and Zahra is responsible for what is inside the house." Respected brothers and sisters, we have a choice, and we will have to live through the consequences of our decisions, both in this life and the next. The day of Ashura was the last struggle for the men that accompanied Imam Hussein in Karbala. It was the day that they would go to the battlefield to fight and be killed. And with their death, their suffering in this world would end, and they would be awarded their position as the best companions to have ever existed and secure the best afterlife for themselves. But what about the women that accompanied Imam Hussein? Why did they choose to be patient and endure all of the suffering that followed after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein? Wouldn't it have been easier for them to go and fight and be killed like the men? Of course it would have been easier, but these women knew that their duty was something else. They knew that if they went and fought and were killed, then Islam would have been killed too. If they went to the battlefield like the men, then we would not be sitting here today in this Majles. And so, the women of Karbala kept Islam alive by sticking to their God-given role as a woman, even with all of the difficulties that they had to go through. And it's up to our women of today to follow in their footsteps, to keep Islam alive in our current and future generations. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.